come true on Wheel of Fortune with Nicky Campbell and Jenny Powell. The chance to win huge cash prizes and holidays of a lifetime.
You're about to win something, yeah? Laugh the board laughs with you.
It's the hottest game show. Try your luck on Wheel of Fortune, Wednesday at 7 on Carlton.
This is Carlton from London, your weekday ITV. Now today's national and international news from ITN.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Vicar stabbed to death by a man he tried to help. Why the Commons Committee said no to a ban on handguns. Under fire in Grozny, Pope Spain for an early truce. And a miracle escape for the driver hit by a plane. Good evening. Liverpool is in shock and mourning tonight for a young priest stabbed to death by a man he was trying to help. The Reverend Christopher Gray, the 32-year-old vicar of St. Margaret's, Anfield, was murdered in his own churchyard. Tonight, the Bishop of Liverpool, Dr. David Shepherd, took Mr. Gray's place at a service in the church and told the congregation they had lost an outstandingly gifted priest. Police have named a man they want to question. Our North of England correspondent Ben McCarthy reports from Liverpool.
This evening, members of the Reverend Chris Gray's parish gathered at St Margaret's Church to grieve and pray for their vicar at the regular Tuesday evening service that he would have taken.
He was just a good vicar. He was too good, and that's all we can say. And that's why it's happened to him. I think we may have been the last people to have seen him last night before he died. Because we dropped him off at midnight here. And he came home alone. That's when he must have met his death.
The Bishop of Liverpool stood in for the young clergyman who was enormously popular and much loved. Described as one of the most gifted priests of his generation, Chris Gray was awarded a double first from Oxford. He spoke several languages and was a talented musician. He chose to devote himself to a diverse inner city community, which is tonight feeling his loss very deeply.
We are all shocked. We have lost an outstandingly gifted priest. You at St. Margaret's have lost a deeply caring parish priest, pastor, and friend. A frightening and evil act seems to have destroyed so much that is good. I have no smooth answers to that. It feels like sheer loss and waste.
Chris Gray was killed yards from his home next to the church. Neighbours had heard shouting shortly after midnight. They came out to find their vicar had been stabbed and saw a man running away. He then broke into a house and tried to abduct a woman, but she fought him off and he escaped in her car. Detectives have named the man they want to question. He's 31-year-old Terence Story, who was released from jail in December. He'd been visiting the Reverend Gray for counselling during the last 2 weeks.
Obviously, an attack of this type on a member of the clergy is something that certainly I haven't known during my 29-year service. It's a most unusual thing to happen. And I think that probably the criminal fraternity will regard it as being just as serious as an attack on a small child.
Tonight, Story is still on the run, but detectives believe he won't have left Merseyside. They warn that he's extremely dangerous and won't hesitate to use violence again if he's approached. Ben McCarthy, News at 10, Liverpool.
The government is distancing itself tonight from the Conservative-controlled Commons Committee, which came out against a total ban on handguns. The Home Office Minister David McLean said the report, which infuriated Dunblane parents, isn't Conservative or government policy. He said ministers will bring forward legislation after they have seen Lord Cullen's report on the Dunblane shootings. Our Home Affairs correspondent Harry Smith reports.
The publication of the report comes 5 months to the day after 16 children and their teacher were shot dead in Dunblane Primary School. In sharp contrast to the political unity shown then, today's report splits the Select Committee along clearly defined party lines. The 6 Tories on the committee say a complete ban on handguns would be ineffective. Among the reasons they give, there would still be easy access to unlawful handguns and rifles. There would have to be numerous exemptions, such as vets, slaughtermen, and starters in athletics meetings. They also say it would end pistol shooting as a sport. and compensation of up to £140 million might have to be paid to those required to surrender their weapons.
If we thought that banning handguns would achieve anything, we would have recommended that. Nobody's frightened of doing that. But it won't achieve anything. I mean, if you ban a handgun, somebody will go and use a sawn-off shotgun.
But the 5 Labour MPs on the committee say the Conservatives are leaning too far towards the gun lobby.
We've only got to look at the names on the headed notepaper of the British Shooting Sports Council to see that there's quite a considerable overlap. And I frankly think that the Conservative Party has been nobbled on this issue.
In Dunblane tonight, the families of those who died attacked the committee's recommendations.
I feel very angry. It may have been different for these MPs if it had affected their lives, their children. I just think our children had a right to life.
The official inquiry into Dunblane, chaired by Lord Cullen, is due to report soon. The government tonight stressed its intention to wait until then before acting, as ministers moved to distance themselves from their own MPs.
It is not Conservative Party policy, it's not Lord Cullen's policy, and it is not government policy.
So all eyes are now on Lord Cullen, who's expected to produce the findings from his inquiry towards the end of next month. The reaction to today's report will provide a powerful reminder to the government of the strong emotions now tied up in gun law, and increase the pressure on them to act swiftly, as they promised to do, on Lord Cullen's recommendations. Harry Smith, News at 10 at the Home Office.
The Russian news agency Interfax reported tonight that Russian and separatist commanders in Chechnya have now agreed a ceasefire. It's due to begin at midday tomorrow. But there was no break in the fighting in the Chechen capital Grozny today, and as ITN's Julian Mannion reports from there, it's the civilians who are being hardest hit.
We went into Grozny looking for any sign of a ceasefire, but found Chechen rebels preparing to go into action again. Russian artillery shells were smashing into houses nearby, but the rebels moved forward to tighten their siege of a Russian army post. These rebel troops have been in action for 7 straight days, battling against the Russians, who are beyond these apartment blocks about 200 yards away. The rebels say they see no sign of a ceasefire, and certainly they don't intend to agree to any deal that does not allow them to remain here in Grozny. In this northwestern district, the Russians are still holding on in a heavily fortified blockhouse. The Chechens don't have the heavy weapons to destroy it, but they remain immensely confident.
As you see, our fighters control the whole city. The Russians are holed up in their positions and they can't even stick their heads out.
As we moved with the fighters, we came upon small groups of refugees. This battle is inflicting enormous suffering on the civilian population. Russian gunners have been shelling these apartment buildings because Chechen fighters are operating there. Several blocks are badly damaged, and today Russian jets were flying intimidating passes overhead. But people are still living here. People like Zenaida Kruchkova. She cannot leave because she has to look after her 32-year-old son, who's been handicapped since birth.
I cannot take my son out of here. My mother is also very frail. I've got no strength left, and I've been crying all night.
This is the 3rd battle for Grozny, and once again it is leaving homes smashed and lives ruined. Both sides are still fighting for the upper hand, and while they do so, it's the ordinary people of this ruined city who are paying the most terrible price. Julian Mannion, News at 10, Grozny.
Here, another case came to light tonight of a woman wanting to have one of the twins she's expecting aborted. She's reported to have said her house is too small for 2 more children, and she and her husband can't afford them. The anti-abortion group Life is collecting money to help her. Here's our health correspondent, Anya Sitaram.
The unnamed woman who lives in Banbury in Oxfordshire has told her local newspaper that she's considering aborting one or both of her twins of 20 weeks because she and her husband can't afford to raise them. It comes just a week after the case of a single mother who had a healthy twin aborted at London's Queen Charlotte's Hospital because she couldn't cope with the financial strain. As in that case, the group Life is trying to raise money to save the Oxfordshire woman's twins. The latest controversy follows hard on the heels of a case of Mandy Allwood, who told her story about being pregnant with 8 babies. She's seen here in a TV commercial for the News of the World. As more newspaper revelations were published today about Miss Allwood and her boyfriend, Paul Hudson, his mother told ITN that Mandy should have some of the fetuses aborted if that's what doctors advise.
if she can pull it off. So, good luck to her. But if it's going to threaten her life, I advise her to have the pregnancy reduced.
And she doesn't approve of the couple's attempt to cash in on the multiple pregnancy.
They should have went on their own accord and said, well, my girlfriend is expecting 8 babies, I know what they're going to offer. Yes, it's wrong.
Whatever the outcome, the two cases highlight the potential conflict between big money deals and what's best for the and the babies they're carrying. Anya Sitaram, News at 10.